A literature review discusses published information in a particular subject area and sometimes information in a particular subject area within a certain time period. A literature review can be just a simple summary of the sources, but it usually has an organizational pattern and combines both summary and synthesis. A summary is a recap of the important information of the source, but a synthesis is a reorganization or reshuffling of that information. It might give a new interpretation of old material or combine new with old interpretations. Or it might trace the intellectual progression of the field, including major debates. And depending on the situation, the literature review may evaluate the sources and advise the reader on the most pertinent or relevant. The main focus of an academic research paper is to develop a new argument, and a research paper is likely to contain a literature review as one of its parts. In a research paper, you use the literature as a foundation and as a part for a new insight that you contribute. The focus of literature review, however, is to summarize and synthesize the arguments and the idea of others without adding the new contributions. Literature reviews provide you with a handy guide to a particular topic. If you have limited time to conduct research, literature reviews can give you an overview or act as a stepping stone. For professionals, they are useful reports that keep them up to date with what is current in the field. For scholars, the depth and the breadth of literature review emphasize the credibility of the writer in his or her field. Literature review also provide a solid background for a research paper investigation. Comprehensive knowledge of the literature of the field is essential to most research papers.
What should I do before writing the literature review? A. Clarify. If your assignment is not very specific, seek clarification from your instructor. First, roughly how many sources should you include? Second, what types of sources? Books, journal articles, or websites? Third, should you summarize, synthesize, or critique your sources by discussing a common theme or issue? Fourth, should you evaluate your sources? Fifth, should you provide subheadings and other background information such as definition and or history? B. Find models. Look for other literature review in your area of interest or in the discipline and read them to get a sense of the types of themes you might want to look for in your own research or ways to organize your final review. You can simply put the word review in your search engine along with your other topic terms to find articles of this type on the internet or in an electronic database. The bibliography or reference section of search you have already read are also excellent entry points into your own research. C. Narrow your topic. There are hundreds or even thousands of articles and books on most areas of study. The narrower your topic, the easier it will be to limit the number of sources you need to read in order to get a good survey of the material. Your instructor will probably not expect you to read everything that's out there on the topic, but you'll make your job easier if you first limit your scope. Keep in mind that UNC libraries have research guides and to databases relevant to many fields of study. You can reach out to the subject librarian for a consultation. And don't forget to tap into your professors or other professors' knowledge in the field. Ask your professor questions such as, if you had to read only one book from the 19th on topic X, what will it be? Questions such as this help you to find and determine quickly the most seminal pieces in the field. D. Consider whether your sources are current. Some disciplines require that you use information that is as current as possible. In the sciences, for instance, treatments for medical problems are constantly changing according to the latest studies. Information even 2 years old could be obsolete. However, if you are writing a review in the humanities, history, or social sciences, a survey of the history of the literature may be what is needed. Because what is important is how perspectives have changed through the years or within a certain time period. Try sorting through some other current bibliographies or literature reviews in the field to get a sense of what your discipline expects. You can also use this method to consider what is currently of interest to scholars in the field and what is not.
Strategies for writing the literature review. First, find a focus. A literature review, like a term paper, is usually organized around ideas, not the sources themselves, as an annotated bibliography will be organized. This means that you will not just simply list your sources and go into detail about each one of them one at a time. No. As you read widely but selectively in your topic area, consider instead what themes or issues connect your sources together. Do they present one or different solutions? Is there an aspect of the field that is missing? How well do they present the material, and do they portray it according to an appropriate theory? Do they reveal a trend in the field, a raging debate? Pick one of these themes to focus the organization of your review. Second, convey to your reader. A literature review may not have a traditional thesis statement or the one that makes an argument, but you do need to tell the readers what to expect. Try writing a simple statement that lets the reader know what is your main organizing principle. For example, the current trend in treatment for congestive heart failure combines surgery and medicine. More and more cultural studies scholars are accepting popular media as a subject worthy of academic consideration. Third, consider organization. You've got a focus, and you've stated it clearly and directly. Now, what is the most effective way of presenting the information? What are the most important topics, subtopics, etc. that your review needs to include? And in what order should you present them? Develop an organization for your review at both a global and local level. First, cover the basic categories. Just like most academic papers, literature reviews also must contain at least 3 basic elements: an introduction or background information section, the body of the review containing the discussion of sources, and finally, a conclusion and/or recommendation section to end the paper. Introduction. This section gives a quick idea of the topic of the literature review, such as the central theme or organizational pattern. Body. This section contains your discussion of sources and is organized either chronologically, thematically, or methodologically. Conclusions or recommendations. This part discusses what you have drawn from reviewing literature so far. Organizing the body. Once you have the basic categories in place, then you must consider how you will present the sources themselves within the body of your paper. create an organizational method to focus this section even further. To help you come up with an overall organizational framework for your review, consider the following scenario. You have decided to focus your literature review on materials dealing with sperm whales. This is because you have just finished reading Moby Dick, and you wonder if that whale's portrayal is really real. You start with some articles about the physiology of sperm whales in biology journals written in the 1980s. But these articles refer to some British biological studies performed on whales in the early 18th century. So you check those out. Then you look up a book written in 1968 with information on how sperm whales have been portrayed in other forms of art, such as in Alaskan poetry and French painting, or on whale bone, as the whale hunters in the late 19th century used to do. This makes you wonder about American whaling methods during the time portrayed in Moby Dick. So you find some academic articles published in the last 5 years on how accurately Herman Melville portrayed the whaling scene in his novel.
Now, consider some typical ways of organizing the sources into a review. The first one is chronological. If your review follows the chronological method, you could write about the materials above according to when they were published. The second is by publication. Order your searches by publication chronology, then only if the order demonstrates a more important trend. And the third is by trend. A better way to organize the above searches chronologically is to examine the searches under another trend, such as the history of whaling. The next is thematic. Thematic reviews of literature are organized around a topic or issue, rather than the progression of time. However, progression of time may still be an important factor in a thematic review. And the last is methodological. A methodological approach differs from the two above in that the focusing factor usually doesn't have to do with the content of the material. Instead, it focuses on the methods of the researcher or writer. Sometimes, you might need to add additional sections that are necessary for your study, but don't fit in the organizational strategy of the body. What other sections you include in the body is up to you. Put in only what is necessary. Here are a few other sections you might want to consider. First is current situation. Information necessary to understand the topic or focus of the literature review. The second one is history. The chronological progression of the field, the literature, or an idea that is necessary to understand the literature review if the body of the literature review is not already a chronology. The last one is methods or standards. The criteria you use to select the source in your literature review or the way in which you present your information. For instance, you might explain that your review includes only peer-reviewed articles and journals.
The next is begin composing. Once you've settled on a general pattern of organization, you're ready to write each section. There are a few guidelines you should follow during the writing stage as well. Here is a sample paragraph from a literature review about sexism and language to eliminate the following discussion. However, other studies have shown that even gender-neutral antecedents are more likely to produce masculine images than feminine ones. Hamilton asked students to complete sentences that required them to fill in pronouns that agreed with gender-neutral antecedents such as writer, pedestrian, and persons. The students were asked to describe any image they had when writing the sentence. Hamilton found that people imagined 3.3 men to each woman in the masculine generic condition and 1.5 men per woman in the unbiased condition. Thus, while ambient sexism
accounted for some of the masculine bias. Sexist language amplified the effect. Source: Erica Falk and Jordan Mills. Why sexist language affects persuasion. The role of homophily, intended audience and offense, women and language. So in the begin composing, the first is use evidence. In the example above, the writers refer to several other sources when making the point. A literature review, in this sense, is just like any other academic research paper. Your interpretation of the available sources must be backed up with evidence to show that what you are saying is valid. The second is be selective. Select only the most important points in each source to highlight in the review. The type of information you choose to mention should relate directly to the review's focus, whether it is thematic, methodological, or chronological. The third is use quotes sparingly. Falk and Mills do not use any direct quotes. That is because the survey nature of the literature review does not allow for in-depth discussion or detailed quotes from the text. Some short quotes here and there are okay, though if you want to emphasize a point, or if what the author said just cannot be rewritten in your own words. Notice that Falk and Mills do quote certain terms that were coined by the author, not common knowledge or taken directly from the study. But if you find yourself wanting to put in more quotes, check with your instructor. The next is summarize and synthesize. Remember to summarize and synthesize your sources within each paragraph as well as throughout the review. The authors here recapitulate important features of Hamilton's study, but then synthesize it by repressing the study's significance and relating it to their own work. Next is keep your own voice. While the literature review presents others' ideas, your voice or the writers should remain front and center. Notice that Falk and Mills weave references to other sources into their own text, but they still maintain their own voice by starting and ending the paragraph with their own ideas and their own words. The sources support what Falk and Mills are saying. And the last is use caution when paraphrasing. When paraphrasing a source that is not your own, be sure to represent the author's information or opinions accurately and in your own words. In the preceding example, Falk and Mills either directly refer in the text to the author of their source, such as Hamilton, or they provide implementation in the text when the ideas they are mentioning are not their own, for example, Gaskell's.
And the next is about revise, revise, and revised. Drive in hand, now you're ready to revise. Spending a lot of time revising is a wise idea because your main objective is to present the material, not the argument. So, check over your review again to make sure it follows the assignment or your outline. Then, just as you would for most other academic form of writing, rewrite or rework the language of your review so that you've presented your information in the most concise manner possible. Be sure to use terminology familiar to your audience. Get rid of unnecessary jargon or slang. Finally, double check that you've documented your sources and formatted the review appropriately for your discipline. Works consulted. Usually, students consult about their thesis with lecturers who are expert in the field of study or the material discussed in this thesis.
This consultation starts from the determinations of this topic until its completion. Then, below are some sample references. Please do not use the list as a model for your own reference, as it may not match the citation style you are using.